Did you know that more than 113,000 children are waiting to be adopted from foster care? Ellie was one of them. When she was placed in foster care at 16 after experiencing significant abuse, she felt unlovable. Thankfully, Ellie was adopted with help from the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption. Today, she's planning on college and has a bright future. But more than 20,000 teens age out of care every year. You can help. Visit davethomasfoundation.org/learn more.
At Mayo Clinic in Florida, we are predicting the unpredictable. Our experts are using a patient's own anatomy to create 3D printed, life-size organ models to map out challenges ahead of time, making complex surgeries more precise, efficient, and less invasive. We are making more possible at Mayo Clinic because every day we're doing what's never been done. Learn more at mayoclinic.org/possible. Mayo Clinic, you know where to go.
For exclusive podcasts and more, sign up at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, what happens to adults and children once they've been arrested in Nashville? Their paths to justice are just as varied as their stories. We'll discuss the Max original documentary series, Justice USA. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband and love of my life, Kevin Flynn. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca.
Also with us is private investigator, certified pet detective, resident cat lady, and author of the Piper Green series of cozy mysteries, Lara Bricker. Hi, Lara.
Hey, Rebecca.
And finally, our resident doubting Thomas, author of the City Trilogy of novels, host of Strange Arrivals, our Patreon Deep Dive Book Club podcast host, and Family Ties historian, Toby Ball. Hi, Toby.
Hey, Rebecca.
I know, Toby. It's a new thing. I'm really digging how much you know about Family Ties.
I'm doing research as we speak.
You are. And
Toby's researching whatever happened to Nick from Family Ties.
Yeah, Scott Valentine.
Meantime, I'm going to start Googling Anson Williams and find out what Potsy's been doing all these years.
Kevin, I really would like to entice people to join our Patreon right now this week, even though it's Thursday. We have a after show that comes out Mondays.
Yeah.
Because next Monday's after show is going to be lit.
Do you want to tell everybody what we're going to be talking about?
Yes, I do.
We better not forget to talk about it.
No. Toby saw The Princess Bride after we all made fun of him for having never seen The Princess Bride during our podcast a couple weeks ago when we taped it live. And he finally watched it, and we are going to discuss it on the after show next week. So, what an amazing time to join our Patreons that you don't miss that one. Right, Kevin?
Absolutely.
I cannot wait. I cannot wait for his take on the ROUSs. Cannot wait. Now he knows what it means. Now he knows. It's so exciting. It's inconceivable that he had never seen it before.
Inconceivable.
All right, Kevin.
Just the question we have to ask everybody, if Toby, just so everybody can hear, is which accent from Mandy Patinkin was worse? The Princess Bride or Death and Other Details?
I feel like The Princess Bride was more intentional than Death and Other Details, so I would... Death and Other Details definitely is worse.
Definitely. All right, so Kevin, this is Thursday's program.
It is.
What's happening on Monday's podcast?
All right, we're doing it. We're going to talk about season 4 of Serial.
Okay, so I'm looking forward to that. All right, well, we have a big topic to talk about in this program, so I think we should get right to it. I know that Lara Bricker's got lots to say. I'm excited about that.
Do it.
Let's go ahead and drop that first clip right now. Leading off.
I like to tell people that in Nashville, the police arrest the person, the sheriff's office is trying to arrest the problem.
After being booked, defendants in Nashville's justice system must navigate a labyrinth of challenges. They include people whose mental illness gets them in trouble, an abuse survivor who finds herself both victim and defendant, a couple using jail as an opportunity to get clean from heroin, and teenagers facing life sentences for murder.
I do not think we should be trying children as adults. They don't have an in-depth understanding like an adult about the full lifelong consequences of their actions. But I do think there is a community pressure No, we have to do something about these wayward, unruly youth.
There are also many judges and corrections officials who acknowledge the system's default setting is for incarceration, not rehabilitation. And they recognize the inadequate resources available for those who need help once they're released.
If we believe that people deserve a chance to be treated and rehabilitated and that they can make a difference in their lives, then the way that we do our current system is inappropriate. Everything about it.
The Max original Justice USA is an insider's view of Nashville's criminal legal system, going inside the jails for men, women, and juveniles. The series features a variety of stories about inmates, lawyers, and judges who confront issues of incarceration, mental illness, and addiction. Spoiler alert, we are going to be talking about plot points from Justice USA. So if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes for our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews. Now, Laura Bricker, I know this series hit really close to home for you. Can you talk about why?
Yeah, no, I have worked in the criminal justice system on and off for the last 20 years. And this is like my soapbox. This entire documentary is like the soapbox speech that I'm always giving people about generations of families that have been incarcerated because they can't break the cycle, how there's not treatment for mental health and drug addiction. And I think this really brought the human element to the forefront. So people who might not be familiar with the concept of restorative justice have a really good overview of what it is and why those who are advocating for that approach as opposed to the status quo are doing so. And I'll just say it was very accurate. It really, as somebody that has been in jails, as somebody that has been in courthouses, as somebody that has been out on the streets trying to interview witnesses, this was very accurate in terms of what happens in that system on all levels.
Yeah, Kevin, there was definitely a wide variety of stories in here. This was a long documentary.
Yeah, I might have gone on maybe just a little too long, 6 hours, but that doesn't mean it wasn't extremely informative. But the weakness, I think, of the format is that we get a handful of stories in those first 3 episodes, and then by that time, all of a sudden we get like a whole new set of story, like season 2 or something like that. And I think they could have done a better narrative job of sort of stitching together like these timelines as opposed to kind of dropping off in favor of a new group of stories. But maybe that's picking nits, but they could have maybe structured it a little differently so that we're invested in a whole bunch of stories throughout to the end.
So Toby, were you surprised at how sort of aware of the systemic failures so many of the people who were working within the system in Nashville seem to be? I mean, I'm so accustomed to watching documentaries, with one notable exception that we recently watched on Netflix called Unlocked, a jail experiment. But I'm very accustomed to watching documentaries where people working within the system seem largely unaware. Judges, lawyers, people working actually in jails and prisons just seem to just sort of accept that this is the way that it is. And we see one kind of bad judge in this, but for the most part, even those who can't do, or who aren't, sort of held responsible for the failures seem to be aware of the failures in a way that I was not expecting them to be.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's heartening. Like, they talked to one judge quite a bit, and she talks a lot about restorative justice and I guess sort of the relationship of the justice system to Nashville and the people that she, serves.
When I have transfer hearings, all I see in the courtroom are victims of systems, victims of dysfunctional families, victims of a crime who have lost a loved one. Every single person in that courtroom is a victim.
In these kinds of things, it's always, you wonder, are they picking out the people who kind of can talk this talk in order to get that perspective in the documentary? Or is this actually fairly pervasive within the system? Because every once in a while, you'll just see, like, there's one part where, and I'm not going to remember any of these people's names, but the woman who was formerly a heroin addict, and she's trying to get out, and she's talking to a judge on a screen, and she's like kind of gives her appeal, which, you've been watching her for a little bit, so you feel very sympathetic to her. And then the judge is like, asks the prosecutor, what's your take? And she's like, keep her in here. And she's like, keep her in here. Off you go.
I hated that fucking woman when she waved at her at the end.
What an asshole.
Douche.
Yeah.
That was her probation officer. I was like, fuck her.
Or parole officer, right? He broke parole. Yeah.
There were these little moments like this where it was like, there's this talk that we hear that seems pretty progressive. And then like there are these examples of times when that doesn't seem to actually trickle down to these people's lives. It seems like sometimes the people who are given leniency aren't necessarily the people who need leniency at that point. And some of the people who could really benefit from leniency are the ones who get kept in. And I think that's a tough one to watch. So yeah, I had some question about how much these philosophies actually are active in the system.
Yeah, I was also surprised at how many officials expressed, compassion for those coming through and a recognition that the system probably isn't working and that they have a desire to do better. Now, maybe they're just saying that to the camera. You're right. Maybe they just happen to find the one or two judges and wardens and corrections officials who are going to say that.
30% of the population in our jail system today are diagnosed mentally ill upon arrival.
Okay.
Turn around. There you go.
Most modern countries would not send someone to jail for being ill. Jail is not designed well to treat illness.
But you do see occasionally, they are trying to walk the walk where they set up this center. Is it the BCC? Or it's kind of like a diversion program where they are basically trying to give inpatient care to people who've been arrested for their mental illness or their addiction, right? And they recognize what we've all been saying, which is that a lot of these people don't belong in jail, or the only reason they're in jail is because there's no other part of the safety net that's going to catch them other than jail. Because if you go on unmedicated for a mental illness long enough, if you go on being desperate in order to get drugs, you will eventually do something that runs afoul of the law and you're going to wind up in jail. But we do hear from a couple of people that say, yeah, we need to do better by the people who are coming through, because they also recognize that most of those people are going to rejoin society. Probably for every sheriff and warden who just wants to give them, bread and water, there are those that say we can do better and I am in a position where I can do certain things and I can't change the whole system. And some people still need to be held accountable regardless of their circumstances coming in to the legal system. But there are opportunities and we need to take them.
The one thing about the BCC was that it seemed to be all white people. Like when you compared who was actually in the BCC and being treated versus who was in the jail. Mm-hmm. Like the first time I saw it, I was like, have I seen anybody who's not white amongst the patients here? And there may have been one out of like 10 that we saw, but it was striking how different the racial makeup of the people there was. And that just may be luck of the draw. They just happened to film on a day when that was, because there wasn't a lot of people, but it kind of like, it was a little strange.
I noticed that too.
Yeah. But you're right. It's notable because if you look at the racial breakdown of inmates, that comparative to the general population, it's heavily skewed to people of color.
So one of the things I really like about the series, Laura, is it really does show a range of people who have contact with the system. And sometimes it isn't important to know why somebody has had contact with the system, like what they quote did or what they're accused of doing. And in this series, it makes sense because you're talking about a system and like, does the quote punishment sort of fit? What is the path after what happened kind of thing? To me, one of the most interesting stories in the series is the Teresa story, because this is somebody who, by her account has never been arrested before. She's in a volatile, relationship situation, registered gun owner, business owner. She is confronted with a situation and she basically says, I'm going to shoot you. Whether or not she actually would have or not, you don't get the impression she would have, right? It becomes clear later that this is an abusive relationship she's in, and she was probably saying this to defend herself, right? And then it becomes clear even later that she's been in a series of abusive relationships, and that this latter one is less bad than the previous one she was in. And she sort of gets sucked in to this system because the situation escalates.
I was trying to keep telling myself, Teresa, this is only a 12-hour hold. Don't lose your mind in here. And then when they let me out, I was thinking, okay, my ordeal is over. What was I wrong?
you see her make a series of decisions that are based on her life circumstances. Like at one point, she decides not to hire a lawyer. And I'm just like, my heart sunk for her. But at the same time, like, that's her situation, right?
Well, the thing that drove me crazy in this, and then I'll get to Teresa, is when they would say, do you have a lawyer? Are you hiring a lawyer? And they'd be like, no. And they just let them proceed pro se. And I know there seemed to be a lot of skepticism of the public defender, but like, that's a lawyer.
Right.
Like, why wouldn't you take some legal help? There was more than one person that they allowed to just continue pro se who doesn't really know what's happening in their case. But with Teresa, I mean, there's cases like that happen all the time. And, I think one of the things that you really see highlighted when you get this look into the criminal justice system and who's getting arrested and who's getting charged is just these like cycles of generational trauma in families where you have women that are repeatedly getting into abusive relationships. And then you find out that their parents were in an abusive relationship. And it's a family cycle. It's a family system. I mean, and that often happens where you'll see somebody who like, okay, now the boyfriend is getting arrested. Well, the next time when they're fighting, the girlfriend like fights back and now she's getting arrested. And so in this case with Teresa, it was just stark to me because she's arrested with this gun situation with John, who when the police come and we see it on camera, John's like, oh yeah, like she's going to shoot me. And John is like really forceful about that she was going to do this, da 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 da. But then when her estranged husband shows up and she's trying to get away and she falls and has this like crazy foot break, she can't even get around. She's got like one of those walkers on wheels like my grandmother used to have. Now we see John back in the picture showing up at court because he wants the charges dropped, which also always happens in a lot of cases where the victim always shows up wanting to recant because they want to reconcile again. But then when you actually observe him taking care of her, he's being pretty nice to her, quite honestly. He's getting her some chicken tenders or whatever. But like you see a different side of him than we see in the beginning.
But then he recommits and ends up getting arrested again and ends up going to jail.
Yeah. So it's just like, it just continues and continues and continues the cycle. But I mean, we also see cycles in families where, and I want to talk about Kelly, who is the chief of juvenile probation, who was Caleb's probation officer. And she's like somebody in the system that really cares about the people that she's helping. And like probation's there to, kind of be the hard ass. But she goes out and she had worked with his older brother. So she's been with this family for years. She knows the family. She meets the grandfather. She talks with Caleb very honestly about kind of getting his life on track and like getting out of this gang he's in. She's telling him he's going to end up 6 feet deep if he continues down the current path. So you're seeing like there in that family, like generations going on.
So Ken, what do you think about our friend Lindsey Graham?
You mean the one who has a sign on her desk that says Lindsay, not the shitty one, Graham?
Yes.
I thought she was great. I mean, does she only have like 2 clients? Because she seems to have all this time and care and compassion that she offers Keith. Keith is the black man, is a student at Tennessee State University with the mental illness and like doesn't have access to his medication, and that's why he ends up in jail. And, he's an example clearly of someone who could succeed if he has uninterrupted access to his medication. And just every time you think he's going to turn it around, Lindsay's able to do something for him, or he has a good legal outcome, the next time we come back to him, he's almost like in a worse situation till eventually he's homeless. And, I will say it was also important that we got to see the body cam footage of the incident that kicked this off.
Yes.
For one, we get to see what he's like when he's not medicated. And it's scary and sad because that's how he is. You could see why he came off as threatening in that moment. But it's also important to note that the cops fibbed a bit, saying that he assaulted them where he was threatening, but he didn't touch anybody. And then what ends up happening is, as such, even though they know that this is a mental crisis that this guy's going through, they grab him up and they throw him in jail as if he committed an assault and that mental illness was not a factor here. He clearly needs that kind of intervention. But he's very lucky that he got Lindsay, because this seems to be someone who's not only really savvy and knows how to work the system on behalf of her clients, but for a public defender, she's really, working like she is one of these high-paying, high-class lawyers who get super quality, just like the quality you get on Patreon.
Oh, just like that.
Just like that. If you pay a little bit, you get a lot.
You get your own Lindsey Graham.
Get your own Lindsey Graham.
That's right. We'll be your Lindsey Graham. We'll be your ride or die.
Yeah, I mean, for just a small sustaining membership, you get over, let's see, I think like 18 podcasts each month. I mean, how many days in a month are there?
17.
There's so
About
many.
30.
28.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah, at worst. So you get all sorts of great exclusive podcasts, like our Crime Writers on After Show. This week was good, but next week
is going to be lit.
Next week is going to be way better.
I have so many questions for Toby.
We have the podcast.
I'm going to come with quiz questions and see if what he took away from the film.
I feel like I'm going to have to rewatch before then.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
I may do
I
that
feel like
too.
I may have to too, actually.
Everybody bone up. We have the advice podcast, Married with Podcast, where Rebecca and I dish out advice on all sorts of things, relationships, families. And we have one listener who wanted our opinion on whether getting a different therapist might improve her outcomes for her mental health. And the answer is maybe, right? Maybe.
We're not experts in everything.
We're absolutely not experts. We're not experts in anything. We also have great podcasts like Leave It to Bricker and Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast. Well, you go to our website, crimewriterson.com. You can get our weekly newsletter. It's out today. You can get recaps of the episodes, the pet of the week, post of the week, crime of the week, and all sorts of other goodies. And we have an Amazon storefront where you can see some of our favorite things. Rebecca, what are this week's Amazon recommendations?
Oh, I am going to recommend Hunter short rain boots in green. They're one of my favorite pieces of footwear.
And you get that from Amazon. Also, Toby Ball.
By the way,
what?
I put that in the storefront.
You're able to do
You can
some of the
check
tech.
them
All
out.
right.
Yes.
Yeah, you can find it there. Also, Toby Ball. What are your listener-inspired Toby Ball's deep cut recommendations?
Starting off with the Miro Kitty women's sleeveless lace floral elegant cocktail dress, crew neck knee length for party, dark green large.
Ooh.
Sounds
Dark green
nice.
large, all right.
All right. And then the other one is Alley Oop portable travel razors for women. Perfect for touch-ups on the go. Includes refillable blades, moisturizing bar, and water spray bottle. Safe.
I'm just going to say, aren't all razors travel razors? These must be really tiny. Like really tiny. They're like this big.
Straight razors.
They're mini.
Remember to shop us first at amazon.com/shop/crimewriterson. We earn commissions on qualified purchases.
What Kevin means is bookmark us and buy all your stuff from Amazon by using our link. That's what he means. That's what he means. Right, Kevin? All right, Kevin, before we end the business section, do we have any Patreon patron saints of the week this week?
Our Patreon patron saints are Anna Carey and Chantel Hicks. Bless you.
Anna, Chantel, thank you so much for being a part of our Patreon family. And those of you who aren't yet, I strongly encourage you to sign up before next week's after show so you can hear Toby's takes on The Princess Bride. It's going to be amazing. All right, Kevin, does thus end the business section?
Thus ends the business section.
I'm going to go ahead and fade that music out right now.
St. Louis is famous for introducing the world to gooey butter cake. Now, Bluebell brings to St. Louis and the rest of us gooey butter cake ice cream. A rich combination of cake batter ice cream, a luscious cream cheese swirl, and gooey butter cake pieces. Your taste buds will agree. It's the gateway to the best. Available in pints and half gallons. Look for Bluebell ice cream at your favorite grocer. If you can't find it, ask for it.
So, Kevin, you thought this show could have benefited from better quality sound design?
Yeah, better quality is always better, and that's why I like to shop at Quince.
Ooh, Quince!
Imagine upgrading your wardrobe with luxury essentials at unbeatable prices. Quince is here to transform the way you shop with a range of high-quality items priced within reach. So all Quince items are priced about 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they partner directly with top factories. So you know what they do? They cut out the middleman and pass the savings on to us.
Why are you talking about this and not me? This is literally one of my favorite places to shop. Okay. I love Quince.
You know who else loves it? It's Laura Bricker. Laura, tell us about the last thing that you got from Quince.
I got my most favorite new prized possession from Quince. I got this really nice black motorcycle jacket, and I am looking forward to wearing it on my little pink scooter as I drive around Exeter this spring. So far, I've just been wearing it around town, getting many compliments, and it really is buttery soft, real leather. It is fantastic.
Indulge in affordable luxury. Go to quince.com/crime for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns.
Wow.
That's QUINCE.com/crime to get free shipping and 365-day returns. So if it leap year,
that's right.
You're out of luck.
That's right. It's clothes that begin with the letter Q, Alex.
Quince.com/crime.
Crime.
Emmy award-winning John Mulaney presents Everybody's in L.A., a special run of 6 live episodes created by and starring Mulaney that'll stream live on Netflix during the Netflix is a Joke Fest. The comically unconventional show will feature special guests where John Mulaney explores the city of Los Angeles during a week when every funny person is in it. Watch John Mulaney Presents Everybody's in L.A., debuting May 3rd live at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, only on Netflix.
All right, so before the break, Kevin was talking about Keith Thomas, Toby, and you made a note about him as well. There's a lot of themes of mental illness in this show, and I know that that's obviously a big part of the criminal legal system, and I'm just curious to know how you think that was represented here in this documentary.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was super interesting. They go through several different people where that's clearly the main issue they have, and then it seems to be a contributing issue to 80% of everybody else. I mean, it just seems pervasive. With Keith Thomas in particular, what you become aware of is just how thin the ice is beneath people's feet, right? It just takes one incident and his life just completely falls apart, right? He was on scholarship at Tennessee State. And even just like the accusation, like he's not even convicted of anything, but he loses his scholarship. He can't go to school anymore. He loses his housing. And from that moment forward, he's living this very, very difficult existence from when he was in college. And, you know, he's working towards a degree. I don't think we find out what in, but it seems like he has like a path. And then suddenly that path is just taken away from him. Yeah, I mean, you see, and we've talked about this before, but the justice system is not the way to deal with mental health issues, right? And it starts off with that one guy, the guy who'd been a pitcher, Zachary. Like that really seems to be his only issue, right? Is that he has mental health problems and he doesn't even remember really what happened. And I don't think we're really clued into it either. But there's no reason for him to be in jail. Like he definitely needs to be somewhere where he's being evaluated. They're coming up with some kind of drug regime for him. And it's a thing that also the people who are running the system bring up. But I think that the problem is there's no alternative right now, right?
And there's no, in some cases, I think we really see that the follow-up care is also the issue because we have the woman that goes to that new treatment center who's schizoaffective disorder or schizophrenic or whatever. And she's got her caretaker, Buddy, who's supposed to come and pick her up. She's talking about wanting to get help. They take her over there. She has a plan. She's been getting stabilized. Buddy comes to pick her up and she's hit the trail and she's nowhere to be found. And then we hear about how she continues to get rearrested. And then she goes back to the treatment center. And it's like, you know, you see how hard it is for people with that degree of mental illness to stay stabilized when they're on their own.
Yeah.
You know,
I have to say just the contrast between, and I hate to say this because it's like, it's so sad because I was looking at her situation in particular and I'm like, in our state, she would be locked in the state psychiatric unit on the state prison grounds because that's all we have. We have, you know, people like her, our emergency psychiatric unit is at the state prison. Like there's nothing in between. It's like you're there's the state hospital, which is in lockdown. And then there's the emergency one, which is at the state prison. And it's like, there's this huge mental health crisis. There's not enough beds. And every time there's a bill passed, it's like, we created 6 new beds. And it's like, oh, awesome. Like 6, right? And the fact that I was like, oh, wow, isn't it great that she can keep going back? And I think that is better. It's like, no, it's amazing to me that that's the way my mind has been set because that's how bad it is. Like in the world we live in here in the United States for people who have mental health issues who aren't rich and who don't have a very strong foundation of healthcare. But even people who do have a strong foundation of healthcare, mental health issues are so stigmatized that they end up losing their jobs. They end up not wanting to talk about them. They end up not seeking treatment, and they lose that strong foundation of healthcare. And that this is, it's like so easy to fall into that. It is so easy. And I think it's just something that like we need to spend more time thinking about and addressing. I think it's one of the biggest crises in the United States that we don't talk about enough, for sure. We mentioned him briefly, Laura, but there is one really shitty judge that makes a cameo in this documentary.
Oh, yeah. There's always a shitty judge, Rebecca. That guy. I mean, that was true to life, because that's the system. You have people that are progressive, that want to see change, that see the system as flawed. And then you have that old school guy who's like, and here is my letter from John Wayne Gacy, or my bail order, or whatever it was that he signed. And then like, he's just like, can you work? Can you get a job? Like, he's an asshole.
Well, you appear to be a strong, healthy, able-bodied young man, and I'm going to add another $200 on your court cost. The taxpayers are paying for your lawyer. They're paying for that orange jumpsuit, paying my salary, the clerk, the sheriff. You probably cost the taxpayers, I'd say, $4,000 or $5,000 to this point.
On the flip side, you have that Judge Sheila Calloway, who oversees the juvenile court, who's like amazing and talks about her 70% diversion rate. So, and can we just talk real quick? I don't know if anyone else was struck by, I think one of the saddest things in this for me was seeing the juvenile facilities and hearing the stories of these, kids that are locked up.
Yeah, I do want to talk about
classroom. It looked like an elementary school classroom.
Yes, yeah. And some kids and their parents are also like, oh, you're going to be in the same facility as your mom or what. It's like, but also, some of these kids were involved in some very serious crimes, and I think the documentary does a very good job of humanizing the circumstances and the kids, sort of explaining like everything around it, and then also showing the restorative justice program. Kevin, you made a note about that. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'd like to get to that, but to finish up our discussion on the juvenile centers, in a way, sometimes they show some of the facilities, and this is probably not the right word, but they seemed lovely. They had, gardens,
flowers
and stuff. At least in your mind, what you think about, like, oh, what's juvenile jail like?
We don't have that in New Hampshire.
But like after you see sort of like they have some services for the young people, and they're trying to do something for them.
Art programs.
And like a real kind of school, like say where they're writing books and whatever like that. They're doing things that seem like in the realm of educational versus just sitting in a cell. And then we see one teen who now is going to be tried as an adult, so she is sent to the adult jail, and how just different it is there. And she just hides in her cell underneath a blanket and doesn't want to eat. And that's obviously, it's a very difficult adjustment, but like the facilities are just so different in what they attempt to offer. It was just quite sad.
And I think it's important to note that is also rare. There are so few. And the fact that even I'm saying like, that's so much better. I mean, it's still very, very sad to like lock up young people, but a lot of young people, facilities for young people offer nothing.
Yeah.
They offer absolutely nothing except like abuse and isolation. And that's extremely.
No one's saying it's great.
No, but it's extremely common. It's extremely uncommon for facilities to offer anything at all. But Kevin, you did want to talk about the restorative justice program, right?
Yeah, and I know Laura's going to want to talk about this too. But I was kind of heartbroken by that, because you have this one story about a 13-year-old who sort of went on a joyride with a car and crashed into a guy, waiting to pull out of a parking lot, and killed the old man. And so the diversion program was to have the family of the victim meet with the teen. And that family, I mean, they just showed so much grace.
I want to say thank y'all for everything. And I also want to say I'm very, very sorry. I was in juvenile, and every day all I could say is, why him instead of me? Because I was doing wrong, and I knew that.
We have seen at this point in the previous 5 episodes what would happen to that kid if he went into the system, and how this diversion program, we hear how it has good outcomes and why it's beneficial. And you see that because of this kid, he has the opportunity to turn his life around, and it's going to give him purpose to honor the victim by living up to his potential with the encouragement of the family. And that was just so moving to me, Laura.
Oh, yeah. I cried at 3 stories in this last episode. And this is where it began, was the story of this little 13-year-old and just seeing how small he was. And like you said, listening to the family of the victim talking about him and how, again, honoring this man's memory by taking this chance you've been given to be a good person and to change your life. And I just started crying. And then from there, the man, Antonio, who's out like picking up trash in the parking lot at this building and like living in this abandoned building. And we've heard from his parents about how they've really had to cut him off because every time he comes home, he steals from them. And they've had to do this tough love. And they go out on his birthday to find him.
I need you to get it together, man. I need you to get it together. For your sake, not mine, for your sake. I love you, son. I love you, man.
And then I started crying again because it was so sad. Like this family, like imagine their heartbreak. The third thing that tipped me over the edge in this last episode, I don't know if you all felt like this, Katie overdoses.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because her boyfriend, they were getting clean together. He was getting clean, but then he's incarcerated again. They have a fight and he ends up hanging himself. So she relapses, but we hear that she's like just basically all alone. And she's sitting at this bus stop all by herself, but she's so determined. I was like so rooting for her. Were you guys rooting for her?
Absolutely.
I was like, please,
Absolutely.
Please. Oh my God.
And in the final card, she seems to be doing a lot better, which is
she looked so much better.
Yeah.
But I think seeing that and they do sometimes in New Hampshire now, they do that restorative justice where they do have the mediation where they bring everybody in to sit down and talk like that.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot, I think, for a victim of a crime to be able to approach that with the grace that family did in this show.
Yeah. Because in a way, you have like no right to ask for that kind of forgiveness. And when it is given, it is so moving. And, you could see that the kid's parents were so grateful and it seemed to be cathartic for the victim's family. But it also seemed like he got it. That he said, like, I feel so much better now. And he wasn't just like being like a snotty 13-year-old kid, like,
okay, I'm just going to say you have no right to ask for it, but the system also isn't built for it.
It isn't built for it.
It is a competitive system built on winning convictions and built on villainizing
and incarceration.
Perpetrators.
Yeah.
And so families are actually programmed to demonize perpetrators.
Well, I think the district attorney was talking out of both sides of his mouth when he talked about kids, where he's saying, they don't understand the permanence of death and they don't understand the consequences for the action. One time he says it to camera, and you think that he's saying it because the way he's saying it and the inflection, it's kind of like, yeah, we need to do something to help these kids because they don't understand the permanence of death, blah. And then we see him on a televised debate, and he says these kids don't understand the permanence of death and the consequences of their actions. And it's like, but now the way you're saying it, it's like you believe that
you got to lock them up.
You got to lock them up because they suck. And it's like, well, which is it, brother?
Tell me what you're going to say.
Well, I'm just the restorative justice thing, again, that seems like the ideal. And I think just in general, just removing people from society based on these things is not helpful towards building a better society, right? I mean, it just seems so resource intensive, just to put it in just starkly utilitarian terms. Like that seems like something that can work for a terribly, terribly small proportion of crimes, right? I assume that part of this program is monitoring and follow-up because, again, in the moment, I think it's easy to be emotional and committed and all these things. But how old is this kid's, like 13 or 14, right? It's just natural that his take on things is going to change as the years go by. And how do you keep somebody like focused on the things they need to be focused on? How do you ensure that the second chance works out? And, and it's really something, again, that should be happening broadly, right? But instead, it's just going to happen to a few people who they don't really explain how this all came about, whether it was the family got in touch with this place and was like, look, we don't want this kid going to jail forever. Can you mediate? Or the court got it started or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the tough things for me when I was watching it, I was like, this is not available for like Diamond, for instance. And she seemed like a person who could potentially benefit from something like this, because she seemed to me like she was totally down for taking any direction that was put in front of her. Like, they're like, write a book. She's like, okay, I'll write a book. I never thought I was going to write a book, but here's my book. I've actually got 2 of them. And she takes sort of great pride in it. And, so I guess that's kind of what I came away with. I was like, this is a great example. I don't know if it's really a model that works at scale, given the way we're set up right now.
I think it's a model that only works at scale if you dismantle the other one completely and take all that money and use it to pay for this model. Because it's like, keeping somebody incarcerated costs a fucking lot of money too. And it's like, but that's not something I think we're going to be doing anytime soon.
Emmy award-winning John Mulaney presents Everybody's in L.A., a special run of 6 live episodes created by and starring Mulaney that'll stream live on Netflix during the Netflix is a Joke Fest. The comically unconventional show will feature special guests where John Mulaney explores the city of Los Angeles during a week when every funny person is in it. Watch John Mulaney Presents Everybody's in L.A., debuting May 3rd live at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, only on Netflix.
CIDP disrupts.
CIDP derails.
Let's be honest.
CIDP sucks. But living with CIDP
doesn't have to.
When you sign up at shiningthroughcidp.com, you'll find inspiration and real patient stories,
helpful tips, reliable information, and more.
CIDP can be tough,
but finding hope
just got a little easier.
Sign up at shiningthroughcidp.com.
Be heard, be hopeful, be you.
The South Dakota Stories, Volume 7. My trip to South Dakota was the best summer ever. Now I don't need to go to Mars, because I've been to the Badlands. And I caught a bigger walleye than Dad when we went to the Missouri River. Then I rode my bike through these huge rocks called needles. Ooh, I also saw my first herd of bison, even a fuzzy furry baby one. I can't wait to go back and see more. There's so much South Dakota, so little time.
All right, let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know, should they check out the series Justice USA? It's a Max original. What do you think, Laura Bicker? Thumbs up or thumbs down for Justice USA?
Well, y'all know, I loved this. It was a thorough look at the criminal justice system in Nashville and the legal system in Nashville. And it showed kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly. I mean, it showed people that are in the system that are trying to change the system, that are bringing understanding and compassion to how they're dealing with people that are arrested, that are incarcerated. And it showed the old school system and the people that are stuck. And it showed some new ways that people are trying to implement through either, restorative justice programs or treatment facilities as an alternative to incarceration, and how that is something that is starting to slowly evolve in this system. So I thought it was really interesting. I guess it took 9 years to film this. The only criticism I would have is I feel like we started following some people in the beginning that kind of dropped off. And for me, I felt like the stories of the people that I was most invested on really happened in the second half of this series. But either way, I thought this was something that was important to watch, and a thumbs up from me.
Toy Ball, thumbs up or thumbs down for Justice USA?
Yeah, I basically like this. I think the one thing, and we didn't talk about this in the main review, is I think kind of echoing the way life kind of works. The documentary seems to take what everybody says kind of at face value, right? There's no like pushing back in real time on anything. But in the course of the documentary, the people who are the prisoners or the arrestees or whatever, like you're able to see through their actions, whether they're being forthright when they're talking to the documentarians. The people who are actually in power, there's not that same kind of accountability. There's not that ability to say, are your actions matching your words? Like there's no time at which that happens with them. So that was kind of the thing that made me a little bit questioning as we went through this. It's like, okay, I'm supposed to take it on, this judge really talks the talk and she says all the right things. You see one instance where she makes a decision that you're maybe like, I don't know about that, but you don't know how much of that is like normal for her or how much of that is just, we've got invested in this other person's story, so we have strong feelings about it that maybe don't comport with the facts that the judge is looking at. So this is kind of like, in some ways it's a quibble, but in other ways, to me, it seemed like kind of an important thing in that it seems like some people are held to account, some people maybe less so. That being said, I think a lot of the stuff it talks about is super important about particularly mental health, addiction issues, restorative justice, all these things that I think are super, super important for people to kind of see in documentaries. That's all there. So, I'm a thumbs up in general, but I just felt like it was missing one kind of big piece, which is looking at the system and pushing back a little bit. And that didn't seem to be sort of on the agenda here.
Kevin Flynn.
I am going thumbs up on this. This was really interesting. I do like the sort of 360 look that you get here at people who are going in and out of the system, the people that are helping them. And it was surprising to me that some of the people who are sort of on the inside, that the voices that you hear that are compassionate and that the ones that we're always hoping to hear, a judge who recognizes sort of the systemic issues facing the people who come to the court, people who are trying to use the system as a way to help certain people and to get them going on the right path because they realize there are no other places that will do that, and certain experiences that they have control over could actually be detrimental. So it sort of demonstrates a lot of the things that we were hoping that we get out of a new modern justice system. It's hard to tell what's just for the camera. It's certainly hard to tell what the scope of it is for every nice judge who sees that and wants to do good by the juveniles who come in front of it. We get judges that are just happy to hang them high. So it is a portrait, I would say, of hope, but also of realism. There are some very sad stories here, and I think that it's a tale well told.
Yeah, I liked it too. It's sort of like what Serial Season 3 tried to do and did it a little bit better, I think, in terms of in-depth look at one place and how people interact with that one place in different situations. I don't want to repeat everything that everybody said. I share a little bit of Toby's point of view, but in a slightly different way. I do feel like it showed a slice of people in power who did have really progressive, pro-social justice points of view. And it made me wonder what percentage of Nashville's system they made up versus the kind of people we're sort of more used to seeing in those positions of power. And I would have loved just some sort of sense of that. Is this representative of Nashville? Is this what Nashville is like? Or are these the people that the documentarians chose to focus on? That was the one big question I had. But yeah, I mean, in terms of they followed a very interesting cohort of people in very different situations, but with the pattern sort of emerged that sort of told a deeper story. And I really liked that about it. And you can't walk away from this, even the person that committed the most serious crime in this, you can't walk away from this watching and not feeling something for that person. And I think that anytime you can watch something like this and feel that way, it's well done. So yeah, thumbs up for me for this series. I thought it was pretty good. All right, that's going to do it for us. But before we go, Laura Bricker, question for you. Do we have a cat of the week this week?
We do. We have this place in Exeter that's always posting funny signs, although sometimes I'm like, I don't know if I think this is so funny. So the sign at the Foy Insurance this week said, "Finally, my winter fat is gone. Now I have spring rolls." Well, you know who else has spring rolls is a rescue cat out in Indiana named Thicken Nugget. Now, Thicken Nugget's an orange cat. We know I love orange boy cats. Thicken Nugget was turned into the Humane Society. When he arrived, he weighed 30 pounds.
Jesus Christ.
One staff member said, quote, "We had quite the surprise about the moment they first saw the cat." Now, cats are supposed to weigh between 11 to 15 pounds, according to this article I'm reading in the People magazine. Ty weighed twice that. So they came up with a unique exercise plan for him, swimming. So they raised money for his water therapy. It takes place twice weekly at the Canine Aquatic Center. They have a Facebook page where they're documenting all of this. At first, Thicken Nugget was not a fan of lessons, but in their April 3rd update posted at the Humane Society, it was revealed his hard work is paying off. He is well on his way to reaching his goal weight, thanks to everyone has donated. He is swimming twice a week, is much more mobile, and is down from 30 pounds to 26.8. He's even swimming across the pool all by himself.
Amazing.
Good job, Thicken Nugget. So, spring is here. Maybe it's time for a little swimming. Either way, I love the picture of this cat in his little swim vest as he's swimming around in the pool.
Incredible. I cannot believe they have this cat swimming. All right, Laura Bricker, if folks want to submit their animals, whether they be svelte or not, to be cat of the week, obviously it could be any kind of animal. How can they find you on social media?
They can find me at Laura Bricker on Twitter and Instagram.
And of course, you can always email us at crimewriterson@gmail.com. That's how we get, I think, most of our submissions. Toby Ball, how can you be found online?
At Toby Ball NH.
Kevin Flynn, what about you? How can you be found?
I'm at Kevin P. Flynn.
And if you want to find me everywhere, look for me at Reb Lavoie. Follow the show everywhere, Crime Writers On, YouTube, Reddit, everywhere. But mostly, join our Facebook group. It's freaking awesome. Go to Facebook, find our page. You'll find the post to join the group. Get episodes early and ad-free and everything else we make at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia. Our theme song was composed and performed by Ty Gibbons. Our line editor is the terrific Livy Burdett. The executive producer of this program is Kevin Flynn. This show was recorded in the Treehouse Yoga Studio above the Mockingbird Cafe in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi studio, otherwise known as Studio C, The Closet, in our New Hampshire basement, where we also wish we had a lawyer like Lindsay, nope, not that one, Graham. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later.
I'm Laura Bricker, and I've busted another married man on a dating app this week.
Really?
For work or for pleasure?
Well, I don't know if I want to call it for pleasure, but yeah, I mean, like.
Okay, that's a good fucking after show topic.
Okay.
Actually, I have had 2 of those recently.
We have 2 quick true crime updates, and that's a third one.
Okay.
That's a true crime update.
In Crime Media.
Emmy award-winning John Mulaney presents Everybody's in L.A., a special run of 6 live episodes created by and starring Mulaney that'll stream live on Netflix during the Netflix is a Joke Fest. The comically unconventional show will feature special guests where John Mulaney explores the city of Los Angeles during a week when every funny person is in it. Watch John Mulaney Presents Everybody's in L.A., debuting May 3rd live at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, only on Netflix.